Elowen Carver was 29 years old when she vanished without a trace from the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. A talented tattoo artist and owner of a small studio in the historic downtown district, she had built a loyal following of 15,000 subscribers on her YouTube channel, where she showcased her intricate designs and shared glimpses of her creative process. Her work was distinctive, often incorporating mystical symbols and ancient patterns that seemed to tell stories beyond the ink itself. Those who knew Elowen described her as magnetic, someone who commanded attention the moment she entered a room. She had 2 children, a 4-year-old daughter named Iris and a 7-year-old son named Callum, both from previous relationships. By early February 2022, Elowen had secured funding to expand her business, planning to open a second location in Savannah. She'd already signed the lease and ordered equipment. Her mother, Patricia, often said that when Elowen set her mind on something, nothing could stop her from achieving it. But in the final weeks of January 2022, something shifted. The confident, driven woman everyone recognized began exhibiting behavior that alarmed those closest to her. She spoke frequently about being watched, about forces beyond her control closing in. She made predictions about death that would prove disturbingly accurate. Marcus Thompson was the father of Elowen's youngest child, Iris. Their romantic relationship had ended the previous October, roughly 3 months before she disappeared. But they maintained what both described as a respectful co-parenting arrangement. There was no documented history of violence between them, no restraining orders, no bitter custody disputes. When Elowen went missing, social media users immediately targeted Marcus, flooding his accounts with accusations and threats. His name trended locally for weeks. The evidence that would eventually emerge painted a far more complicated picture than simple domestic violence. On the night of Tuesday, January 25th, at approximately 2 in the morning, Marcus received a phone call from Elowen that he later described as deeply unsettling. He was asleep when his phone rang, and Elowen's voice came through with an intensity that immediately pulled him from his drowsiness. She apologized for the late hour, acknowledging that he had to work in the morning, but insisted she needed to tell him something that couldn't wait. What she said next would haunt Marcus for years to come. Elowen told him that her last 4 serious relationships before him had ended in death. 4 men, she claimed, had died within the span of 6 years. When Marcus asked her to clarify what she meant, Elowen responded with words that chilled him to his core. She said she had called those deaths into being, that she had wished them into reality. Marcus, confused and concerned, told her she was talking nonsense and needed to seek help. He ended the call, assuming she was experiencing some kind of mental health crisis, but Elowen wasn't finished. Over the next hour, she sent him a series of text messages containing images he struggled to understand. There were pictures of occult symbols, screenshots of articles about her zodiac sign Scorpio and its connection to death and transformation, photographs of altars with candles and personal items arranged in specific patterns. The messages grew increasingly cryptic and disjointed. 2 days later, on Thursday, January 27th, something occurred that would become central to understanding Elowen's final days. A resident of her apartment complex, a retired schoolteacher named Helen Rodriguez, noticed unusual activity in the shared courtyard area behind the building. Through her kitchen window, Helen observed Ella kneeling beside a small plot of earth near the fence line, working with intense focus. It appeared she was either burying something or digging something up. The lighting was poor, but Helen could see Elowen handling what looked like a wooden box, roughly the size of a shoebox. When Elowen glanced up and noticed Helen watching from the window, her reaction was immediate. She stood quickly, brushed the dirt from her hands, and walked directly to Helen's ground-floor apartment. Helen, uncertain about the situation and feeling uncomfortable given the late hour, chose not to open her door. Instead, she spoke to Elowen through her Ring doorbell camera, which recorded the entire exchange. The footage shows Elowen standing under the porch light, soil still visible on her jeans. Her hair was pulled back, and her expression carried a mixture of defensiveness and something else, something harder to define. Urgency, perhaps, or resignation. The first words out of her mouth were an attempt at reassurance, though they had the opposite effect. Elowen identified herself as Helen's upstairs neighbor, then immediately addressed what Helen had witnessed. She said she wanted to be honest, that she wasn't going to lie about what she was doing. She admitted that she practiced what she called root work, a form of folk magic that involves the use of natural materials, personal belongings, and ritualistic processes to influence events and people. She clarified that she used these practices for both positive and negative purposes depending on the situation. Root work, sometimes known as hoodoo or conjure, has deep historical roots in the American South, particularly within African American communities. It combines elements of African spiritual traditions with European folk magic and Native American herbalism. Practitioners believe that by manipulating physical objects, herbs, roots, and personal items belonging to a specific person, they can affect that person's life, emotions, or fate. The practices can be used for protection, healing, attracting love, or securing prosperity. But they can also be employed for darker purposes, controlling someone against their will, causing harm, or even bringing about death. The specific act of burying objects has particular significance in root work traditions. When items are buried on someone's property or near a person's home, it's believed to bind that individual to the practitioner's will, to prevent them from leaving, or to maintain influence over them, even at a distance. The location matters. The depth matters. The phase of the moon, the day of the week, the specific combination of items, all of these factors contribute to the working's intended effect. But there is a cardinal rule in these practices. Secrecy is paramount. Being observed while performing a ritual is considered catastrophic. Practitioners believe that when someone witnesses the working, the energy is disrupted, the spell becomes unstable, and the magic can reverse, turning back on the person who cast it. In some traditions, being caught during a ritual means that whatever you intended for your target will instead manifest in your own life. The spirits that were summoned to carry out your will may decide to collect their payment from you instead. Helen later told investigators that she found the entire interaction bizarre and threatening, though Elowen never raised her voice or made any explicit threats. After their brief exchange, Elowen returned to her apartment, and Helen never saw her in person again. In the days following Elowen's disappearance, Helen mentioned the incident to police, and the Ring camera footage was entered into evidence. A local community activist named Denise Fletcher, who organized search efforts after Elowen went missing, visited the apartment complex to investigate. Denise confirmed that there was indeed an area behind the building where the ground showed signs of recent disturbance. The soil was loose, darker than the surrounding earth, and there was a small depression suggesting something had been removed. But despite extensive searching, neither police nor volunteers ever located the box that Helen saw Elowen handling that night. Whatever Elowen had buried or retrieved remained a mystery. The weekend of January 29th through 30th marked a critical turning point in the days leading to Elowen's disappearance. On Friday afternoon, she drove to her mother's house in Somerville, a quiet town about 30 miles northwest of Charleston. She brought both children with her, planning what Patricia assumed would be a routine overnight visit. Elowen frequently stayed with her mother on weekends, giving Patricia time with her grandchildren while Elowen caught up on rest or worked on design sketches for upcoming clients. Friday evening proceeded normally. Patricia prepared dinner while the children played in the backyard. Elowen seemed tired but otherwise fine, scrolling through her phone and responding to messages from clients. She mentioned being excited about the Savannah expansion, discussing paint colors for the new studio, and her plans to hire 2 additional artists. Nothing about her demeanor suggested the dramatic shift that would occur by morning. But when Patricia woke on Saturday, January 30th, she found Elowen sitting at the kitchen table, visibly shaken. Her daughter's hands trembled as she held her coffee mug, and her eyes carried a hollow quality Patricia had never seen before. When Patricia asked what was wrong, Elowen initially hesitated, then began describing events that made little sense. Elowen claimed someone had been following her for nearly 2 weeks. She described a dark blue sedan that appeared repeatedly wherever she went, maintaining distance but never quite disappearing from view. The vehicle had no front license plate, and the windows were tinted too darkly for her to see the driver. She said it had followed her to the grocery store, to her studio, even to Iris's daycare. The previous Thursday, the same car had been parked across from her apartment complex for hours. Patricia suggested contacting the police, but Elowen shook her head firmly. She said authorities wouldn't take her seriously, that she had no proof, just a feeling. Then she showed Patricia her phone. The call log displayed dozens of incoming calls from blocked numbers, all time-stamped within the past week. Some came in clusters, 5 or 6 calls within minutes. Others arrived in the early morning hours after midnight. Elowen had blocked the number repeatedly, but somehow the calls continued to penetrate her blocked list, ringing through no matter what settings she adjusted. Patricia asked the obvious question, who was calling? Elowen's response was vague and unsettling. She refused to name anyone specific. Instead, she referred to the caller as someone dangerous, someone who wouldn't let her move forward with her life. She used the word evil multiple times. When Patricia pressed for details, Elowen only said that she had made mistakes, that she had involved herself with forces she couldn't control, and now those forces were demanding something from her she wasn't willing to give. Then Elowen said something that struck Patricia as particularly disturbing, given what would happen in the coming days. She looked directly at her mother and stated with absolute certainty that she would not live to see her 30th birthday. Elowen's birthday was June 15th, approximately 4.5 months away. For someone who loved celebrations, who typically began planning her birthday weeks in advance, this statement carried enormous weight. Patricia tried to dismiss the comment as stress talking, exhaustion manifesting as dark thoughts. But Elowen remained insistent. She repeated the statement, adding that she just knew that she could feel it the same way you feel weather changing before the storm arrives. She didn't elaborate on why she believed this or what specifically made her so certain. She simply stated it as fact and refused to discuss it further. On Sunday morning, January 31st, Elowen made another phone call that would later become significant to investigators. She called Marcus shortly after 8 o'clock, waking him for the second time in less than a week. But this time, her message wasn't about past relationships or death wishes. This time, she described visions. Elowen told Marcus she kept seeing him in a fatal car accident. The images were specific and vivid. She saw his truck colliding head-on with another vehicle on a 2-lane highway. She saw smoke and shattered glass. She begged him not to attend the church service he had mentioned planning to go to that morning. She insisted that if he got in his car, he would die before noon. Marcus, already unnerved by Tuesday's call, responded with a mixture of concern and frustration. He told Elowen that she couldn't predict death, that she needed professional help, that whatever she was experiencing wasn't supernatural, but psychological. He reminded her that everyone dies eventually, and living in fear of it accomplished nothing. Despite her pleas, Marcus ended the call and prepared for church anyway. He never made it inside the building. Instead, he sat in the parking lot for nearly an hour, engine off, staring at the dashboard. Later, he would tell investigators that he couldn't shake the sound of Elowen's voice, the genuine terror underlying her words. He recognized that something was profoundly wrong with the mother of his child, and he felt helpless to address it. Eventually, he drove home without attending the service, though he insisted this decision had nothing to do with believing Elowen's prediction and everything to do with his emotional state. That afternoon, Elowen prepared to return to Charleston. Before leaving, she expressed anxiety to Patricia about the drive itself. She worried aloud that something would happen on the highway, that her car would be forced off the road, and most critically, that her children would be hurt. She repeated several times that she needed to protect them, that they couldn't be with her right now. Patricia offered to keep the children for another night, but Elowen refused. She said she needed them close, that separating from them felt wrong. Yet her contradictory statements revealed the internal conflict she was experiencing. She simultaneously wanted to keep them near and feared they were in danger because of their proximity to her. Around 4 in the afternoon, Elowen loaded both children into her silver Honda CR-V and began the drive back to Charleston. Patricia stood on the porch, watching until the vehicle disappeared around the corner. She called Elowen via FaceTime approximately 40 minutes later to confirm her daughter had arrived home safely. Elowen answered from her bedroom, lying on top of the covers, fully clothed. She looked exhausted, saying she planned to nap before making dinner. She promised to call when she woke up. That call never came. According to family members, Elowen woke from her nap around 6:30 that evening. Patricia sent several text messages checking in, but Elowen's responses were brief and distracted. At approximately 7:15, Elowen called her mother in a state of panic. She claimed the dark blue sedan was parked outside her apartment complex again, positioned where it had a clear view of her front door. She said she felt trapped, that she couldn't stay there with the children. Patricia urged her to call the police immediately to file an official report about the stalking. Elowen agreed and ended the call. Whether she actually contacted law enforcement remains unclear. The Charleston Police Department has no record of receiving a call from Elowen Carver that evening, and no officers were dispatched to her address. However, some family members insist she mentioned speaking with a dispatcher, though details of that conversation were never shared. What is confirmed is that shortly after speaking with Patricia, Elowen gathered both children, secured them in their car seats, and left her apartment. She didn't pack bags or gather belongings. She simply got the kids and drove away. Neighbors later reported seeing her vehicle exit the parking lot at high speed around 7:45. At approximately 8:20, Marcus received an incoming call from Elowen. She sounded breathless and urgent. She explained that she was low on fuel, nearly running on empty, and needed him to take the children. She couldn't specify where she was going or why, only that the kids needed to be somewhere safe and she needed them with him immediately. Marcus asked basic questions. Where was she? What was happening? Was she in danger? Elowen avoided direct answers, instead repeating that she needed him to meet her at the Shell station on Highway 17 in Mount Pleasant, just north of Charleston. She said she would explain everything when she saw him. Marcus agreed, but this time he made a deliberate decision. He put his cousin Ryan on notice, asking him to be present during the exchange. Given Elowen's increasingly erratic behavior over the past week, Marcus wanted a witness. During the drive to the gas station, Elowen called Marcus twice more. In the second call, which Marcus also put on speaker so Ryan could hear, Elowen began issuing warnings that made little sense. She told Marcus to watch for specific vehicles on the road. She mentioned a white pickup truck, a black SUV, and a gray Honda. She said he needed to be vigilant, to stay alert, to avoid these vehicles if he saw them. Then she added something that particularly alarmed Marcus. She told him not to stop at red lights. Marcus asked her to clarify what she meant. Elowen's response was insistent but vague. She said people were following, that he was in danger, that he needed to trust her. Marcus told her plainly that she needed help, that whatever she was experiencing required professional intervention. Elowen's voice broke as she repeated that she was telling him the truth, that she needed him to believe her. Marcus arrived at the Shell station first. He parked near the convenience store entrance and waited. Approximately 5 minutes later, Elowen's silver CR-V pulled up to one of the fuel pumps. Marcus approached the vehicle and immediately noticed how disheveled she appeared. Her hair was uncombed, her eyes were red, and she seemed unable to focus on anything for more than a few seconds. Without being asked, Marcus took the fuel nozzle and began filling her tank. He added $40 worth of regular unleaded, while Elowen unbuckled Iris from her car seat. The 4-year-old seemed confused but calm, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Then Elowen asked Marcus if Callum could go with him as well. She said both children needed to be away from her tonight, that it wasn't safe for them to stay. Marcus agreed without hesitation. As he moved to help Callum out of the vehicle, Elowen continued pointing at cars passing on the highway. She identified them by color, murmuring warnings that made no coherent sense. White sedan, watch out. Black truck, see it? Gray van there, do you see it? Her behavior had deteriorated significantly since their last in-person interaction weeks earlier. Once both children were secured in Marcus's truck, Elowen walked over to him. She asked for a hug. Marcus obliged and later described the embrace as deeply wrong. He said it felt like hugging someone who was already gone, that there was no warmth or connection, just desperation and emptiness. Elowen held on for several seconds longer than natural, then released him and stepped back. The plan, as Marcus understood it, was simple. Elowen would follow him to his mother's house in nearby Goose Creek, where the children would stay for the night. This arrangement had happened countless times before without incident. Marcus pulled out of the gas station first, Elowen's CR-V visible in his rearview mirror. But at the first intersection beyond the station, something changed. The traffic light turned red and Marcus stopped. Elowen's vehicle pulled into the left turn lane, accelerated past him, and turned in the opposite direction from where they were supposed to be heading. Marcus watched her taillights disappear into traffic heading south towards central Charleston. He immediately tried calling her cell phone. The first call went to voicemail. The second rang twice before disconnecting. The third call wouldn't connect at all. Elowen had either turned off her phone or the battery had died. Callum, sitting in the back seat of Marcus's truck, asked why his mother had driven away. Marcus had no answer. By Monday morning, February 1st, Elowen's family recognized that something was seriously wrong. Patricia had been calling her daughter's phone continuously since Sunday evening, each attempt going straight to voicemail. Text messages went undelivered, appearing as single gray check marks rather than the blue confirmation that indicated they had been read. Elowen had never gone this long without responding, especially when her children were involved. Marcus contacted Patricia late Monday afternoon, explaining what had happened at the gas station the night before. He described Elowen's erratic behavior, her warnings about colored vehicles, and the moment she had driven off in the wrong direction. Patricia felt a cold certainty settle over her. Whatever Elowen had been running from, whatever she had feared, had finally caught up with her. There was another concerning detail. Elowen had mentioned several times in the previous week that she had an appointment scheduled at the Georgia Lottery Commission office in Atlanta. She claimed to possess winning scratch-off tickets worth a substantial amount, though she never specified the exact sum. The appointment was scheduled for Monday morning at 10 o'clock. Elowen, who was meticulous about business matters and never missed important meetings, failed to appear. Staff at the lottery office confirmed that no one by her name had checked in. On Tuesday, February 2nd, Patricia filed an official missing person report with the Charleston County Sheriff's Office. She provided investigators with recent photographs, a description of Elowen's vehicle, and a detailed timeline of her daughter's increasingly strange behavior over the past 2 weeks. She mentioned the blocked phone calls, the claims of being followed, and Elowen's prediction that she wouldn't survive to see her 30th birthday. Investigators immediately pulled surveillance footage from the Shell station where Marcus and Elowen had met. The video showed Elowen arriving at 8:37 in the evening, her CRV pulling up to pump number 4. Marcus's truck was visible in the frame, parked near the entrance. The footage captured Marcus fueling Elowen's vehicle and the transfer of both children into his truck. Elowen's body language appeared agitated, her movements quick and uncertain. However, there was a significant gap in the coverage. At the precise moment when Marcus and Elowen had their final conversation before parting ways, a delivery truck pulled directly in front of the security camera, completely blocking the view for approximately 90 seconds. When the truck moved, both vehicles were already pulling out of the station. Investigators found the timing suspicious, but couldn't determine whether it was deliberate obstruction or unfortunate coincidence. The surveillance footage did confirm Marcus's account of events. Timestamps, vehicle positions, and the presence of his cousin Ryan all aligned with his statement. More importantly, Marcus was wearing a court-ordered ankle monitoring device related to an unrelated prior charge. The GPS data from that monitor provided a minute-by-minute record of his movements. After leaving the gas station, Marcus drove directly to his mother's house in Goose Creek, arriving at 9:05. He remained there until 6 the following morning when he left for his construction job. The ankle monitor never pinged anywhere near the locations Elowen's phone would later indicate. Investigators verified Marcus's employment records, spoke with his supervisor who confirmed his presence at the worksite on Monday, and interviewed family members who saw him with the children Sunday evening. Within 48 hours of the missing person report being filed, Marcus was effectively eliminated as a suspect in Elowen's disappearance. Yet social media continued to vilify him, with users creating elaborate theories about how he had circumvented the ankle monitor or hired someone to harm Elowen on his behalf. Meanwhile, cell phone records provided crucial information about Elowen's movements after she left the gas station. Her phone pinged off a tower near Somerville at 8:52. Suggesting she had driven northwest rather than south as Marcus initially believed. At 9:17, her phone connected to a tower in Orangeburg County, nearly 60 miles southwest of Charleston. Traffic cameras along Interstate 26 captured her vehicle heading west toward Columbia. But then, the pattern reversed. At 10:03, her phone pinged back near Somerville again, indicating she had turned around and was heading east. A security camera at a closed shopping center in Somerville recorded her CRV passing through the parking lot at 10:28. She appeared to be alone in the vehicle. Most puzzling was data showing her phone connecting repeatedly to a tower near a large apartment complex in North Charleston between 11 at night and 1 in the morning. The signal remained stationary for extended periods, suggesting the vehicle was parked. When investigators canvassed the complex with Elowen's photograph, not a single resident recognized her. No one recalled seeing her vehicle in the parking lot that night. The complex had security cameras, but the footage from that evening had been automatically overwritten after 72 hours before police knew to request it. On Thursday, February 4th, 3 days after Elowen was reported missing, A property owner named Gerald Hutchins was inspecting a tract of wooded land he owned in Berkeley County, roughly 45 miles northwest of Charleston. The property consisted of 80 acres of pine forest, with several unpaved logging roads cutting through it. Hutchins visited the land once or twice a month to check for illegal dumping or trespassing. As he drove his pickup along one of the narrow dirt trails, he noticed tire tracks that appeared fresh, cutting deep into the soft earth. Following the tracks around a bend, he spotted a silver Honda CR-V parked in a small clearing approximately 200 yards from the main road. The vehicle was positioned awkwardly, nose pointed toward a dense thicket, rear end facing the path. Mud was caked along the undercarriage and splattered across the doors. Hutchins approached cautiously. The vehicle was unlocked, and when he peered through the driver's side window, he saw a purse on the passenger seat, a cell phone in the center console, and various personal items scattered throughout. No one was inside. Concerned that someone might be injured in the woods, Hutchins called the Berkeley County Sheriff's Office. Deputies arrived within 20 minutes. The license plate matched Elowen Carver's registered vehicle. Inside, investigators found her wallet containing her driver's license, 3 credit cards, and $47 in cash. Her phone was powered off but undamaged. A makeup bag sat in the back seat alongside a reusable grocery bag filled with clean clothes. In the cargo area, they discovered what appeared to be lottery tickets, perhaps 24 of them, bundled with a rubber band. There was also a child's tablet that belonged to Iris. Outside the vehicle, lying in the grass roughly 10 feet from the driver's door, investigators found a black satin hair wrap. This detail struck family members as significant. Elowen wore a hair wrap nearly every night to protect her hair while sleeping, and she had been wearing one when Marcus last saw her. Such wraps fit snugly and don't simply fall off during normal activity. For it to be on the ground suggested either Elowen had removed it quickly or there had been some kind of physical struggle. Forensic technicians processed the vehicle over the following 2 days. They found no blood evidence anywhere inside or outside the CR-V. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken glass, no torn upholstery. The only fingerprints recovered belonged to Elowen, her children, and Marcus, all of whom had legitimate reasons to have been in the vehicle. The steering wheel, door handles, and gear shift all showed Elowen's prints clearly, with no indication that anyone else had driven the car. However, the exterior told a different story. The vehicle was covered in dried mud, particularly thick around the wheel wells and undercarriage. The mud contained traces of red clay common to the area, but also vegetation and soil consistent with driving through unpaved, potentially swampy terrain. Investigators determined the vehicle had been driven extensively off-road before being abandoned in this location. Law enforcement launched an intensive search operation. K-9 units specializing in tracking living subjects were brought in, followed by cadaver dogs trained to detect human remains. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging cameras flew grid patterns over the area. Volunteer search parties, organized by Denise Fletcher, combed through nearly 300 acres of surrounding forest over the course of a week. They found nothing. No clothing, no additional belongings, no sign that Elowen had walked away from the vehicle in any direction. The cadaver dogs showed no interest in any particular area, suggesting no human remains were present in the immediate vicinity. It was as if Elowen had simply evaporated the moment she stepped out of her car. Investigators interviewed everyone connected to Elowen's life. They spoke with clients from her tattoo studio, several of whom mentioned that she had seemed distracted in recent weeks. They questioned her ex-partners, including Marcus and Callum's father, a long-haul truck driver named Derek Sullivan, who had been in Texas at the time of her disappearance. They contacted her landlord, her neighbors, her hairstylist, anyone who might provide insight into her state of mind. One detail emerged that investigators found particularly intriguing. According to Marcus, Elowen's mother Patricia had eventually disclosed information about another man in Elowen's life. Patricia claimed that Elowen had been involved with someone who had become possessive and controlling, someone Elowen feared. When Marcus pressed for details, Patricia was vague, saying only that this person had been calling Elowen repeatedly and that she believed he might be responsible for her daughter's disappearance. Marcus grew frustrated with what he perceived as Patricia's reluctance to share this information with police. In a video he posted online several weeks after Elowen went missing, he directly addressed the issue, questioning why Patricia would withhold potentially crucial details from investigators. He suggested this individual might work in law enforcement, which could explain both Patricia's hesitation and how blocked calls kept reaching Elowen's phone, despite her security settings. When investigators finally interviewed Patricia in depth about the mystery man, she provided limited concrete information. She confirmed that Elowen had been seeing someone casually in the months after her breakup with Marcus, but Elowen had been deliberately secretive about the relationship. Patricia never met this person, never learned his full name, and only knew what Elowen chose to share, which wasn't much. What Patricia did recall was Elowen's growing discomfort with the relationship. By mid-January, Elowen had apparently tried to end things, but the man refused to accept the breakup. He called constantly, showed up at her studio unannounced, and according to Elowen, had made veiled threats about what would happen if she tried to move to Savannah without him. Patricia said Elowen referred to this person as dangerous and manipulative, but never provided specific details that would help identify him. Investigators requested Elowen's complete phone records, including call logs and text message metadata. While they could see the blocked numbers that had called her dozens of times, they couldn't trace them to a specific individual. The calls originated from internet-based services that masked the caller's true number and location. Without a warrant for those services, which required probable cause they didn't have, the identity of the persistent caller remained unknown. The rootwork angle continued to intrigue both investigators and the public. Helen Rodriguez's ring camera footage showed Elowen explicitly admitting to practicing folk magic for both beneficial and harmful purposes. The timing was undeniable. She was caught performing a ritual on Wednesday, exhibited increasingly paranoid behavior throughout the weekend, and vanished Sunday night. Those familiar with these spiritual traditions pointed out that being observed during such work is believed to reverse the intention, potentially causing the practitioner to suffer the fate they intended for someone else. There was also Marcus's unsettling phone call from Tuesday, January 25th. When Elowen claimed her previous 4 relationships had ended in death and that she had wished for those deaths, investigators attempted to verify this claim by researching Elowen's relationship history. They identified 3 men she had dated seriously before Marcus, but found no evidence that any of them had died. One was living in Florida, another in Virginia, and the third was incarcerated in North Carolina. The 4th person in her supposed count couldn't be identified. Whether Elowen had been speaking metaphorically, experiencing delusions, or referring to relationships investigators couldn't trace remained unclear. Some theorized that Elowen had experienced a severe mental health crisis in her final days. Her behavior, the paranoia about being followed, the apocalyptic predictions about death, the visions she claimed to have about Marcus dying in a car accident, all pointed to someone in profound psychological distress. It's possible she drove into those woods in a state of confusion or panic, wandered away from her vehicle, and succumbed to the elements, or encountered an accident that left her body in a location searchers never reached. Others believe the stalker was real and that whoever had been calling from blocked numbers had finally acted on his threats. The fact that Elowen's car was found so far from any main road, in a location she had no apparent reason to be, suggested she might have been forced there. The missing hair wrap could indicate a struggle, though the lack of any other physical evidence made this theory harder to support. On June 15, 2022, Elowen's 30th birthday arrived. Patricia organized a small gathering at her home with close family members. She prepared Elowen's favorite meal, shrimp and grits with cornbread, and bought a cake from the bakery Elowen had always loved. Iris and Callum were there, though Iris was too young to fully understand why her mother wasn't present. Callum had stopped asking when his mother would come home, his questions gradually fading into silence over the preceding months. Patricia lit 30 candles on the cake, one for each year of the life her daughter should have been celebrating. As she and the other adults sang happy birthday to someone who wasn't there, Patricia thought about Elowen's prediction. Her daughter had been absolutely certain she wouldn't live to see this day. And she had been right. 3 years have passed since that night at the Shell station when Elowen drove away from her children and disappeared into the darkness. Iris is 7 now and has only the faintest memories of her mother. Callum is 10, old enough to understand that his mother is gone, but young enough to still hope she might return. According to Patricia, Callum sometimes asks if they could keep his mother locked safely in the house if she ever comes back, so she can never leave again. The case remains open, but unsolved. No arrests have been made. No witnesses have come forward with information that move the investigation forward. The Berkeley County Sheriff's Office maintains that they continue to follow leads, but those leads have grown increasingly rare as time passes. The mystery man Patricia mentioned was never identified. Despite extensive investigation, police found no evidence of anyone matching the description of a controlling ex-boyfriend with the means and motive to harm Elowen. The box Helen saw her burying or digging up was never recovered. The dark blue sedan Elowen feared was never located or verified to exist. There is a $5,000 reward for information leading to the resolution of Elowen Carver's disappearance. Anyone with knowledge about what happened is urged to contact the Berkeley County Sheriff's Office. Elowen told everyone she wouldn't make it to 30. Whether she saw her fate approaching or somehow caused it through her own actions remains one of the most disturbing questions surrounding her vanishing. Somewhere in the pine forests of South Carolina, or perhaps somewhere far beyond them, the answer to what happened to Elowen Carver waits to be discovered.